I was just thinking as you're talking about war and this, like, you call it the military industrial complex. Do you sort of get resentful about the fact that your wife died fighting for it?
I do. I do. I mean, especially, look, the conflict in Syria was complicated. The conflict in Iraq was complicated. We never should have gone into Iraq. There wouldn't have been a Syria. So there's the lies there, that were years and years before, with the Bush administration wanting desperately to get us into Iraq, the DOD pushing that because Afghanistan at the time had largely been a special operations and intelligence show, which that's a very small footprint and not a boom for the military industrial complex. So this great conventional war gets launched in Iraq. Lots and lies get told, and then ISIS eventually spouts up years later. But by the time my wife deployed to go fight the remnants of the Islamic Caliphate, it was so out of control that we honestly had no other choice but to put some boots on the ground. And it was somewhat of I would say it was a very smart offensive that they're waging there. So she was proud to deploy. I was proud of her for deploying. I had just come off a deployment as well. And Trump was giving us the authorities and the resources we needed to take that out. And then when we got to the point where he took out all the ground that ISIS held, that's when Trump gave the order to get our troops out. And so for me, that was a commander in chief. He realized he actually had to put Americans in harm's way, but he respected them enough to only do so for a vital national security interest. ISIS was, they'd taken over 3 countries at that point. No one else was going to do it. This is where America unfortunately had to step in, and we shouldn't put ourselves in that situation again. But there we were. That was the world he inherited. But he also said what his conditions were. He said, we're going to take out all the ground that ISIS controlled. And when that happened, he didn't come up with a reason for us to extend our occupation. He didn't start building bases. That's what the military-industrial complex wanted. And the second that Trump said, no, I'm getting them out, that's when the career guys like Jim Mattis, Brett McGurk, all these people that were the stalwarts of the global war on terror, and they never wanted the global war on terror to end, they publicly resigned. They committed the bureaucratic slow roll. So I hold a good deal of resentment against those institutions because, my wife and the 3 Americans that were killed with her, that's just a drop in the bucket of the amount of lives that have been absolutely destroyed and lost and squandered, in the global war on terror. And look at where our country is after 20 years of war in the Middle East. We are where we are right now. I wish I could say, and I say this all the time, I wish I could say, as a veteran and as a Gold Star husband, I wish I could come back like our grandparents did and say, hey, we beat Nazi Germany, we freed the free world. My sacrifices were worth something. And unfortunately, I'm a realistic guy. Like, I can't look back. I can be proud of a couple of little missions and stuff I went on, like neat war stories. But what was it for? What am I going to tell my kids? We have to actually make sure that we never make these mistakes again. And we are worthy of the sacrifices, and we're worthy of those who are still willing to sacrifice.
Do you think other vets feel the same way?
It's hard. I think some do, but it's hard when you dedicate your entire life to these wars. It's hard to say, well, yeah, we got it wrong. It's hard to say. I mean, it took me a while to say it myself. And then to not want to break even. I think there's a lot of guys that they're eager to go off on this Ukraine thing because they were so deeply invested in Iraq. They were so deeply invested in Afghanistan. And the way we left Afghanistan was so painful. Okay, give us Ukraine. We'll get this one right.
Do you mean, when you say that, do you mean go to Ukraine, or do you mean they're in support of what's happening in
support, and even if they have to go fight in Ukraine, consequences, where we are strategically be damned.
Right.
Like, let's go. Like, I want to get this one right. This war will be different. It's essentially the gambler's fallacy. Like, you stay at the casino long enough, you'll eventually break even. And that's, tragically, it just hasn't worked out yet to this point.
I didn't even think about that. The fact that some soldiers might feel that way or some veterans might feel that way.
Of course. It always strikes me as odd that there's so many vets who suddenly want to run, not like in a bad way, for the government and hate the government at the same time while having a history of fighting for it. Like, and I know that it's not, then you wouldn't want to work as something you hate. It's more like, I'm sure you want to see a change because you obviously enter probably into the military quite naive to many things. And over the years, you start asking questions, when you start wondering, things develop. And I think what's interesting is, though, before I even ask you anything else, there's a couple other topics. What would you say, though, to people who aren't familiar with you, like what your main policy or like platform is? Like, what are you fighting for? Like, why would somebody in Washington vote for you? Why would somebody in Texas promote your social media? Why would Tucker Carlson put you on TV? Why are you even here? You know what I mean? Like, so what is it about you? What is it that you're bringing to the table?
So I'm a guy who never wanted to go into politics. I mean, I explained to you what happened with my late wife, and then moved back to the Pacific Northwest where I'm from, and then watching COVID take away pretty much all of our rights to be able to, send our kids to school, run our businesses, freely assemble, and then watching the riots, watching Antifa and BLM just absolutely destroy cities, and watch the left, ignite that, cheer that on, weaponize that political violence for their own ends. I felt that we were on the cusp of losing our country. And then the way the election went, watching the mainstream media and big tech kind of move in lockstep to tell us that Biden won this overwhelming victory. And if we questioned it, that we're labeled as terrorists or insurrectionists. And then the woman that I voted for, whose district I lived in, that's a red district, she votes for the impeachment of President Trump. And so for me, it was hey, we have to start making real action, real decisive action to take our country back. Otherwise, the political class, they're not going to do it. They're going to continue to do the exact same things. And for me, I was a Trump supporter early on because he was an assault on the permanent ruling class, Republican and Democrat. I mean, the foreign policy angle was huge. It was near and dear to me when Trump went after the Republican foreign policy establishment. I was actually sitting in Iraq watching the Republican National Convention. And I was like, how come the Apprentice guy gets it more than like all these other so-called like foreign policy experts? Right. Like, he's dead on. And then he said, I want to bring back manufacturing. This country's not getting anything out of our trade deals. I want to put the deplorables, the average Americans, back in the room, in the deal. I want their wages to rise. I mean, that definitely spoke to me, the immigration factor. So really, I want to bring back America first policies so that we can stop putting the rest of the world first, put our nation first, and make sure that the hardworking people of our working class and our middle class, they have a chance at the American dream. Because right now that is being snuffed out by this corporate oligarchy that primarily is on the left, but some of it's on the right as well too. And so I think it's just time for us. I don't think the current fight is left versus right, Republican versus Democrat. I really do think it's we the people versus this corporate ruling class.
If you enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe to our channel so you'll be sure to see similar videos from BlazeTV, with the added bonus of signaling YouTube that your voice and opinion still matters. And if you're looking for more great conservative content, check out one of the 2 videos suggested here.